People will be like, well, I'm just led by the Spirit. And so they look at habits as like religion, like a religious act.
Habits can become religious. Again, you're talking about your choice. That habit will lay a good foundation. When you read your word, you're putting something inside of you that you can meditate on for the rest of the day. It's easy to do things when things are going good in your life. When things are going bad or you hit a rough patch, then you fall back on your training.
Welcome, everybody, to the Aleph After Hours podcast. We are so glad that you're watching this today. Today we have a special guest, Pastor Jimmy Hudgens. Pastor Jimmy is a pastor here at Christian Center Shreveport, but he is also the Aleph School body pastor. And so we're excited to have you today, Pastor Jimmy.
Glad to be here.
Today is a day, it's Friday. It's your off day, so we are extra blessed to have Pastor Jimmy to come up here and to give his off day to, not his Sabbath, but his off day to share with us some of his life story, his wisdom, his insights. So, Pastor Jimmy, you have been at Christian Center for how long?
21 years.
21 years.
This time.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I went, my wife and I and the family came in the early 90s. I was stationed out at Barksdale, so we found this church. And then after we got transferred to New Jersey, and then we moved to Wichita Falls, Texas. And then we came back in 2003, and we've been here since then. So we came back, we were here in February of 2003.
Okay, so literally
21
years, almost to the day, because we're recording this in February.
There you go.
Okay. So, Pastor Jimmy, you also said that you were stationed at Barksdale, so maybe not everyone knows this, but I know it. You were bivocational.
I am.
So what do you do?
I actually fly airplanes. So I fly now for American Airlines. I fly the 787 internationally. And before that, I flew for the military. And actually, even during that, I flew for the military.
So when you flew for the military, what did you fly?
Wow. Originally, we get trained for a year, so we fly two different airplanes, the T-37 and the T-38. Then I went and trained and flew the KC-135. I flew the A and the Q models, and then I flew the KC-10.
Someone out there knows what that is. I just see the models on your desk.
Right, they're tankers. They refuel airplanes in the air.
I just see the pictures.
And then after that, I went back to AETC, Air Education and Training Command, and flew the T-37 and then the T-6.
And now, what do you fly for American?
I fly the 787 for American.
But
I've flown the 727, the Fokker 100, the 737, and now the 787.
787, is that the Dream? No, what's that?
It's the Dreamliner.
The Dreamliner.
Yeah.
You know what I like now is, I don't know if it's American, like the lights when they like glow blue. Like the whole cabin has like this glue.
They have mood lights in there.
They have mood lights.
Yeah.
It actually helps.
And they actually can turn them any color.
Well, they had green. This last flight I was on the other week.
Sure, it depends on the flight attendant. The flight attendants mess with those a lot, but they can make it any color.
It was an interesting conversation between the mother and the child next to me with the green lights. But anyway, it's funny. When I was in Colombia, my roommate, his name's Juan Pablo, he was obsessed with flight simulators. And he loved to fly the 737, the big one, I guess.
Oh, 777.
The 777, okay. He liked to fly that one, and he had this simulator, and it would be like 11 o'clock at night, and he would get on the simulator, and I'd be, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm about to take a trip from Bogota to Spain, to Madrid. I'm like, what? How long is that going to take you? He's like, oh, like 7 hours. And I'm like, so what are you going to do? He's like, I'm just going to sit here and fly the whole thing. And he would. All night long, he would stay up and fly his thing just so he could land it.
He should have done the takeoff and then fast-forwarded it to the landing.
He would wait. He's a plane guy. So, like, I'm saying that because all these numbers you're throwing out, he probably has some understanding of what they look like. He's actually a lawyer, which is ironic, I guess, bivocational some way in his own mind of a personal pilot to himself.
Sure.
And a lawyer. So Anyway, if Wampa's watching, it was good times. Okay, so you fly. You were in the military. How long were you in the military, Pastor Jimmy?
10 and a half years on active duty, and then another 13 and a half years, so 24 total.
Okay, 24 years total, and you retired from the military.
I did.
And so you fly for American Airlines. You're a pastor at Christian Center. So what does your, I guess, day-to-day look like at Christian Center?
Wow. Day to day,
What does a pastor do? We all want to know.
well, everyone's still trying to figure that out. Well, we do what's necessary, I guess. But there's tons of things that we do. For me, I oversee a lot of the ministries, but mostly build relationships. Build relationships with the staff, build relationships with the congregants, and hopefully are able to meet a lot of those needs. And I would say that a lot of my day is spent helping others that are on staff and their projects and what they're going through.
Yeah, actually, Pastor Jimmy is like the pastor of the staff, and so he's had several meetings with me and his office. Seasons come where his office has a line outside waiting for people to get in so that they can talk to him. And you've talked me down from ledges, the proverbial ledge, several times while I've been here. Or if I'm struggling with something, you come in and you say, "Well, this is all your options. This is what you can do, and here's what can happen with each option." And it's very helpful. One season we sold Monster energy drinks in the youth, and you were like, "Well, do the parents know?" And I was like, "Maybe not. I don't know." And so, but we don't anymore, which is good,
There you go.
And so, anyway, so Pastor Jimmy, you do kind of feel like that. You are like the pastor to the staff. I always say you're kind of the glue that keeps everyone together. And so you play a super important role in that part. You're extremely pastoral, which, obviously your title's a pastor, but when I say pastoral is like you want to sit down, make sure people are okay, talk with them, which for some reason, when people come here, they avoid you because of your haircut.
Yes.
Have you noticed that happens?
Well, my wife says I need to smile more. That's for sure. I guess a flat top intimidates somebody. I don't know. I wear my hair that way because it won't grow any other way. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. And
No, I agree.
so
But what is it about your hair? Like you have that military look, is what it is, and so people
Well-
are. But when you get to know Pastor Jimmy, I mean, it's he's the most nice, likable pastoral person probably we have on staff.
Well, everyone liked it when I grew the beard, and because they said it made me look a little bit more approachable.
Approachable. That's the word.
So like if you shaved your beard and mustache off, and I shaved my beard and mustache off, we would look military because we have short hair.
I'd have to do a little shorter.
Not really. You could do that as long as it's short on the sides. It's good.
I might try to come as a flat top this week. We'll see.
There you
We'll
go.
See how that goes. So okay, you pastor at Christian Center. You oversee a lot of the departments, but you also are the student body pastor for Aleph School of Ministry. And more than that, you really every Monday morning at Aleph, we have a leadership class after our devotions where Pastor Jimmy comes in and talks to our students about, life skills, practical things, discipleship things. Sometimes we kind of we focus too much on the spiritual aspects, right, of, hearing the Lord, praying for the sick, things which are important. And we don't always focus on like the character or the how about living a life that's healthy. So Pastor Jimmy does a great job of pulling from his experience and his background, in his military career and everything to kind of impart leadership to the students. And it never fails that regardless of who I talk to, so the students, they always love your classes, and you are a teacher in the sense of you have great just hands-on teaching object lessons, which they love.
Well, object lessons for me help me remember the material, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that learn best if they can be shown, and so I just try to take the theories and make them apply. It's great to have all this theory in your head and what if and all that in your thoughts, but actually where the rubber meets the road is where they're going to be living. And as a leader, you're asked at many times to apply the things that you've learned. And so a lot of that is just using practical application to the things that you're teaching in your classes, or John's teaching in his, or Karen's teaching in hers. And what does that look like in real life? Because it would be great if, as a minister, as a leader, we could sit and we could just pray to the Lord and get revelation and go and preach a sermon or whatever, but we have life to live as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the life stuff trips people up if they don't have their priorities
Big
straight,
time.
if they don't have a foundation to build on. And so I try to bring some of those foundational things out so that the students will realize that their priorities matter, and in order for them to accomplish the things they want to accomplish, they have to have some time management skills and some prioritization skills in order to have a successful ministry.
Absolutely. It's funny. We have, well, one of your favorite object lessons, several, is you do the bed making. You see who all makes their bed,
Right.
and then I guess you do your lesson on it. And then it's always interesting to see who starts making their bed and continues to make it. And then I've run into students, 2 years later, and I ask them, "Did you make your bed today?" And they either laugh and say, "Yes, I did," or they, in shame, they hang their head. But
It's not supposed to be a shameful
It's
thing,
not a
but it is.
shameful
But it is. To me, it's important that they get the concept. The things that you do every day becomes habit. And there's certain things that you want to become a habit in your life.
Absolutely.
Spending time with the Lord, praying to the Lord, taking time out for certain things in life. And making the bed is just one of the first things that you can do in the morning and accomplish a task.
it gets that momentum. Like, Camila makes the bed because I'm usually up first. But it creates a momentum in your life where it's like you start getting things done. But, I mean, you just said something that I think for, like, so many people, you said habits, and you said it's like discipline, right? Because we have a class, spiritual formation and disciplines, and people always forget that aspect. Like, you don't accidentally fall into a healthy life or a good relationship with the Lord.
Right.
Like, you don't just wake up every day and say, "I would love to read my Bible," and just you create that discipline where there are some days you wake up and you might not be like, I'm not feeling it. If you go by your feelings, gosh, you'll be way off course in a few years, but you have disciplines. And those disciplines help you stay on course. I mean, at least,
Absolutely.
This is
And
what
we
I'm
talk
learning
about
from
we
you.
talk about choice in that class. That's the only thing that you can control in this world. The only thing that you have control of is your choice. Even God doesn't mess with your choice.
Yeah.
So, choosing to do the right things, choosing to do the things that are necessary, choosing to do the things that will get you kick-started for the day, that is important. And I have found that is true about making your bed in the morning. If you make your bed in the morning, you have kick-started your day. You have one, made up your bed, so you're not going to go back to bed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you sleep better when your bed's made. At least I do.
Absolutely.
Like,
The covers are all straightened out and everything. If you make your bed properly, your covers are
There's
straightened
some
out.
days where life happens and we wake up and we're 100 miles per hour with the kids, and so we get back at night and the bed's not made, and we'll make the bed. Literally, we'll make
get in
it and just clean it, straighten it out, get it pressed, and then we'll get right into it because you just sleep better when your bed's made.
You do. And then if your bed's made, for some people, they need a clean space. They need a clean atmosphere to actually function. And so that is straightening up something that's messy generally in a room. And it helps a lot of people that have that, I don't know if it's a phobia, but they have that mentality of if things are a mess or if things are
Like that
out of
OCD.
order, then they can't really think as well, or they can't
That's why we
function.
clean the kitchen every night.
There you
If the
go.
kitchen's clean, the whole house can be a wreck. But if the kitchen's clean, there's less, that weight, that crushing anxiety, whatever you call it. There's peace. We'll just say there's more peace in the house. So, but you talking about habits, some people will be like, well, I'm just led by the Spirit, and, I just do what the Spirit, because I've had people tell me this. I just do what the Spirit says. And so they look at habits as like religion, like a religious act. Speak into that.
Well, habits can become religious, I believe, but also, again, you're talking about your choice. So if you choose to do certain things, it doesn't have to be religious. It becomes a habit because you've done it over and over and over, many days in a row, and you wake up and that's just something that you expect of yourself. And so that habit will lay a good foundation. When you read your word, you're putting something inside of you that you can meditate on for the rest of the day. And if you listen to praise and worship music, if you spend a quiet time with the Lord, that goes with you the rest of the day. And you can call it a habit, but it's also a discipline, because you have disciplined yourself now to doing that. And it's easy to do things when things are going good in your life. There's certain things that are very easy to do, but then when things are going bad or you hit a rough patch, then you fall back on your training. And so in the military, we trained all the time, and we would train in stressful environments. We'd train by switching weeks. We'd have an early week and then a late week, because you never know when you're going to be going to war. And so you don't know if it's going to be in the night. You don't know if it's going to be early in the morning. You don't know if it's going to be the evening. You don't know when. And so we would train in all those situations. And then hopefully, if something were to happen, no matter what time you were called up or what time you were called to go do something, you would be able to function because you fall back on the training that you've had. You're literally training yourself. The habitual formation is training yourself to do the things that are necessary to sustain you, to keep you going, to give you a good foundation to work from.
I mean, it's so good. Personally, I've had times, especially when I was on the mission field, where life hits like hard. The storm hits, and it's so easy to let go of the things that are actually giving you life, like the training, so to speak. If you don't have that habit, and you're not disciplined to say, whatever happens, I'm going to make sure I at least do this. Like you have that, I'm going to do this, and it's not a religious thing. It's that I'm allowing this to form my life, because you can easily, in the stress of life, let things go, like spending time with the Lord, reading your word. You stop doing that. Maybe instead of reading the word, you just want to sit and process, or you start scrolling on your phone because it pulls you out of your head. It's a distraction,
Right.
is what it becomes. And so one of your favorite lessons you talk about is, when do pilots eject?
Right.
And so talk about that.
Not when they eject, but when they decide to
When
eject.
they decide to eject. Yeah, talk about that, because I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about.
So
now.
every pilot that has ejected from an airplane, hopefully, made the decision to eject before they ever even took off. And people say, oh, they were planning on ejecting? No, they weren't planning on ejecting, but they had already made the decision of when they would. So we would always train the pilots that you have a time when there's no saving the airplane. Now it's time to make sure that you get out of the airplane before it crashes. And so, but that decision's made long before you ever take off. And in the T-37, for instance, if the airplane was out of control and you're passing through 10,000 feet, then it's the time to start the ejection sequence, because if you started at 20,000 feet and you don't have it recovered by 10,000 feet and you're in a spin, chances are you're probably not going to be able to recover because you've probably already tried 2 or 3 different times. So now then it's time to get out of the airplane. And so you would do the ejection sequence and get out of the airplane.
And you go by, and this is what I like. You eject based off of your training, not based off what you feel.
No.
I feel I can recover. I think I can recover.
And
I think I can pull it out.
that is the hardest thing to do. And I will tell you that it's hard in life as well, because you go to a place and you're there, and things are going nice, everything's going smooth, but something happens. When do you decide to do something different? When do you decide to go somewhere else? When do you decide you can't, there's nothing else you can do? Some people stay in it way too long, and that's when they crash and burn. And so when is the time that you decide that you're going to do something different? And understanding that you're not in control of anything except for your choice. So your choice is, do I stay with this a little bit longer? Can I actually make this work out, or do I go ahead and eject out of this and do something different? It's the same in life as it is in an airplane, but we don't talk about those things much.
No.
Hopefully, in our class with Aleph, one of the things that we do with them every morning is they have a quiet time. They have a time where they're spending with the Lord. They're reading the Word. They're worshiping, and everything. And our goal is not to force them into that, but it's hopefully to create the habit
intentionally
of spending
create a
that time so that they see the benefit of it. Because once you've done that, if you do that every day, once you've done that over a period of time, like the year that they spend in Aleph, hopefully they see the great results of that, and hopefully they understand that is something that will give them life, and that will give them a platform to have a better day, have a better functionality of the day.
Well, and it's amazing how, like, when I run into students that we've had in the prior years, actually, I remember the first year we did Aleph, and we had our times like that. Literally, like 4 months after the school year ended, I followed up with one of the students and asked the person, I said, how you doing? And they were just like, well, I'm okay, but man, I took for granted the devotion times I had in Aleph and how much every day having that time with the Lord really helped my day. And I remember I was just like, you can still do that.
Absolutely.
Like you don't need us. But what we do is we like intentionally create that space so that you can have that time. We can't force you to have it. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who are there and, in their mind, maybe snoozing and they're, taking a nap rather than spending time with the Lord. But at the end of the day, we intentionally have that time for you for the purpose of connecting and spending that time with the Lord. Sometimes they worship, sometimes they read their word. A lot of times now, we encourage them to journal. And journal in their interactions with the Lord in that time period. But it's amazing how that time right there, just that alone, so many students tell me like that made such a huge difference in their life. And I'm always like, keep going. Like we do that every day to instill the habit of spending that time with the Lord. And, I know people are different. Like, I think John's more of a night owl. I'm more probably of a morning person. In other words, like my best of the day is before other people wake up.
Sure.
Because once my kids wake up, and if I'm home, it's I don't know what it is about being a pastor. It's like the laws of pastors at like 10:30. Your day, if something's going to happen, it's going to ramp up at 10:30, and sometimes you don't come down till like 6:30 at night, maybe even later, and it's just like, where did the day go? And so, like, if I don't get my time with the Lord early, then there's a very, very high chance it doesn't happen. And we talked when Pastor Tim was on here, the joke that people think that pastors, we get to sit around all day in meditative prayer and reading the Bible. And I think sometimes we have less time than the average person for that.
And that is so true. And I think that most people don't start their day early enough. And me included.
What time did you wake up today?
I woke up at 8 o'clock today. So The third time.
Yeah.
Shoulder surgery. I wake up throughout the night, but to get up, I woke up at 8. So, which is not like the military. In the military, we would wake up really early. And part of the reason why you would hear on the commercials, the U.S. Army or the U.S. Navy or the U.S. Air Force or whoever, they do more before noon, more than most people do all day long. Well, it's because they get up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning and they get started 3 hours before everybody else. So, but we have a choice. Everyone has that choice. Everyone can wake up earlier. And I would say to the ones that are not able to spend that time, and I'm about to start this myself, which is I'm going to start waking up a little bit earlier during the weekdays instead of waking up at 7:30 or whatever. Wake up at least 30 minutes earlier and start rehabbing my shoulder more and getting the rest of my body in shape. I've been rehabbing my shoulder, but I haven't. I've neglected the rest of my body, so I'm going to have to wake up a little bit earlier to get started. And so everyone can do that. And spending 30 minutes a day, if people would spend 30 minutes a day of their day in the morning, seeking the Lord first and everything, and getting that first, giving that first part of the time to the Lord, I think that your day would go much better. He would order your steps a whole lot better.
Absolutely. I mean, you're just creating that intentional space for him to speak. Do you think Jesus had habits? Did he have spiritual disciplines?
I believe so. I believe with all my heart that he did.
Of course. But these are the kind of questions I'll get. Well, Jesus, I said, yes, he did. Of course. I mean, he knew the Torah. He knew the Old Testament.
Right. He didn't just happen to
absorb
go and
through osmosis
and talk to the Father once in a while. It was a daily thing with him. If he didn't do or say anything that he didn't hear or see the Father do, then he wouldn't have been able to function.
I think this happens in our culture, and I think people think if my heart's not in it, then I can't do it because then I'll be hypocritical. I'll be like, it'll be religious. And it's like, man, I know there's a balance there, but I can't tell you how many times you have to be like to David and be like, soul, you will worship the Lord. You'll be quiet and I am going to discipline you. And you're gonna get in alignment here. I can't tell you how many times I wake up and it's like, I don't feel like praying, right? I don't feel, I'm just open confessions here. There's some mornings you wake up and you had a rough night's sleep, or things are weighing on you heavy, and it's like you'd rather just go distract yourself with stuff,
sure,
rather than connect. And then I'll do for me, my ways. I just either have to get into the Word to read to help get me connected, or I'll go play my guitar, right? And I'm not a great musician, but if for some reason...
You play very well.
Well, I know my 5 chords. But what that does is it helps break off that just when your soul or whatever, I don't know, whatever life weighs you down and you're distracted and you don't want to.
It is your soul.
Yeah.
So we talk about proper alignment, your body, your soul, and your spirit. Your spirit, man, has to have control. It has to. In order for you to live a Christian life, your spirit, man, has to rise above your flesh, rise above your soul, and take command. And so, yes, there's times when your body doesn't feel like getting up. There's times when your soul doesn't want to take the time out to study the Word or pray, and your spirit, man, has to rise above that and say, yes, we will do this, and we will rise above the soreness or the lack of sleep or whatever. We'll rise above what we desire to do, and we will actually do the things that we need to do to make things better for our lives.
I mean, it's like, so when you say it, it's so obvious, but it's so hard in the moment. I don't know. We get these weird belief systems that's like,
That's where you make the decision before the event. Right. You make the decision before the event. That way, when you get to the event, the decision is already made.
Yeah.
You just have to fall in alignment with the decision that you've already made.
Come rain, sleet, snow, I am going to wake up and spend this time with the Lord. And I don't, we didn't say this. I'm sorry, but you're married to Miss Karen.
I am.
I'm sorry, Miss Karen. I should have said that at the beginning. And Miss Karen is the lead intercessor of Christian Center, right? I think she's rubbing off on me because all of a sudden now, instead of waking up early, the Lord's like, hey, at 1 o'clock, let's have some prayer. And I'm like, I don't want to. But I mean, now it's like, I don't know, it's like, you know, you can for sure. I mean, I could stay in my bed and be like, I'm not going to answer the call. But I mean, lately it's just like, I know there's a need. And I know Miss Karen she keeps, maybe that's why you didn't sleep good last night. Was she up and
No,
running?
it was my shoulder. It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't her. She's had to.
I'm not trying to compare Miss Karen to your, nagging, aching shoulders.
Oh no, no, no. She's not nagging or anything like that. She has her own issues of falling asleep, restless leg syndrome and things like that. But
yeah.
she is up in the middle of the night, many nights. Her spirit is restless, and the Lord wakes her up, and she's praying for Israel. She's praying for someone in the body. She's praying for our family or whoever. But she's very sensitive to that. She's very sensitive to the spirit, and when she's in her dreaming phases, where she's really having some intense warfare in her dreams, then she wakes me up in the middle of the night. Many times I've awakened to a loud scream of Jesus or help me or whatever. So it'll wake you up.
So okay, you have a lot of leadership skills. You talk about discipline, all like spiritual discipline, really healthy stuff. And so then you have Miss Karen, who's like, she's very led by the Spirit. Like, so how does that work, being married to like the lead intercessor?
Okay, so you're
and you guys do marriage counseling.
We do.
Okay,
We do.
y'all are the big marriage counselors, and you do your marriage class here. So just
we are
context.
opposites in every sense of the word. We think differently. We process differently. I'm more internal. She's more external when it comes to processing. She's a Pentium, which is old, but I am less than what you need to run the space shuttle. So you don't have real fast conversations with me, I guess, and especially if we're making decisions and
lunch.
stuff, right? So it's interesting. Our dynamics are very different, but it works.
But even talking with Miss Karen and is like, you said she could wake up in the middle of the night because the Spirit is urging her to pray. But even that, I hear her talk about discipline a lot and how she's just, regardless, she's going to commit to doing something.
She does, but she's very good at making a decision and then carrying it out. And a lot of times she does wait on the Spirit and wait on the Lord to guide her in what she's going to do, which can be frustrating to some people. If you are a big planner and you want things planned out, a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, a month in advance, certain things can be planned out, but there's certain things from day to day that aren't necessarily planned out. So she may not accomplish everything that she wanted to do in that day, simply because, okay, I'm going this direction, but the Lord's leading me this direction, so I'm gonna do what the Lord says, which is great because she's very sensitive to the Spirit and she's able to do that. And things work out when you are led by the Spirit like that.
That's true.
Things do work out.
So when you guys went on family vacations, were you the one who had like the itinerary?
Oh, I would have loved to have done that. But what happens is early in our marriage, I realized that doesn't work so well. So I'm one of those practical people that says, if you're not going to use what we did, then why do what I did?
Pick your battles, I guess.
Yeah. So no, we're last minute planners for vacation. We're last minute for doing things like that. We do a lot of fun things, but we don't plan months and months in advance like
You
some
don't have
people
like
do.
a 8 a.m. wake up, 8:15 brush your teeth,
That wouldn't
8:30
work.
eat
That
at
wouldn't
Denny's.
work. You never know. We might be up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. 8 a.m. wake up may not work for us. So we do try to make plans, but we aren't I have learned not to be such a stickler for exactness of the plan.
Yeah, I guess you learned that being married for how long? How many years you've been married?
36.
36 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm coming on my 11th, so I have
There you go.
A few
Well, I'm
more.
actually coming up on 36, but
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Well, so I'm coming. Yeah, okay.
I've been married all my life, Scott.
Yeah,
Life
not a
didn't
day
start until I
over
got married.
36. Yeah, that's true. Actually, when we got married, you realize how life so changes when you get married. So when me and Camila got married, our first 6 months of marriage felt like 6 years. Not
In a good way or a bad way?
Well, both, because you don't realize how selfish you are until you get married.
There you go.
And you don't realize how much you live for yourself, and it's like, well, I want to do this, I'm going to do this, and then you get married, and it's like, you can, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't. And so, anyway, it's like that time of learning and growing, and I mean, it's great. Being married is great.
Marriage is tough on selfish people.
It is, and then kids. You throw kids
Sure.
in there, and
Oh, yeah.
and it pulls out every ounce of selfishness you have, because you now are responsible for this life, this little
Sure.
human.
Providing for them and caring for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Answering their questions. It gives you patience. But okay, so in this line, because this is what I'm thinking, I've been thinking about this a lot. One of the hardest things, because you're talking about, you're doing leadership classes, but one of the hardest things I think about as pastors, and this is just me processing, is discipline. Just as a pastor, like discipleship, the word discipline is in discipleship, right? Because as a dad, my kids are now at the age where it's becoming such, just like you say, because you've told me this. Well, Scott, you can discipline them when they're 5 and it's hard, or you can wait till they're 15 and it's going to be way harder.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you get, but
because they've developed those
habits. And they develop that habit, the lifestyle, whatever it is, those characteristics. And so as a pastor, we kind of have a passive approach to leader. Like, we're very like, hey, it's going to work out. I mean, we're there, we pray for them, and we're not big on confronting. We're just not. I mean, that's not our. I mean, maybe you are. Maybe that's your role. But maybe this is my interview. I don't know.
Do you think God confronts?
Absolutely.
Do you think Jesus confronts?
Oh, I know it's healthy.
Okay. Oh, it is. It is.
I know it's healthy.
There's great examples.
It's just, when you become a dad, before I was a dad, I didn't realize how important discipline was. And then you have these kids and you love them. And it's this thing of, I don't want to discipline you, right? Because it's going to hurt. But then I want to discipline you because I want you to be, for lack of better words, I want you to be a likable human, right?
Sure.
And I want you to honor the Lord. And if I let you keep going this way, you're going to become a little heathen monster.
So now then you know one of the dilemmas that God faces.
Yes.
So you're actually responsible for these children that are coming up, just like He's responsible for us. And He looks down on us, and He loves us, and He cares for us, and He has mercy for us. He gives us grace, but there comes a time where He says, okay, I need to step in here. Something has to change because you're going down a wrong path.
But that's love. Like, that's, and so,
Absolutely.
like, I guess you don't, I mean, for me, maybe you do if you don't have kids, but for me, it was when I had kids that aspect of the Father heart, the God's heart, came out. And I mean, it really shifted me, because I said, He loves me because He disciplines me. And the Bible tells you that.
Absolutely.
But until you're in that situation where you have to bring the discipline, because I'm not a guy who's like, look, I'm going to discipline this person. I'm a very like, yeah, come on, it'll work out, But when I had kids, and I'm like, I can't just have that approach with my kid, or they're going to go way off course. And you have to bring discipline. You start to realize that is actually really, really deep love. And it's actually lazy parenting, and it's actually not loving to passively and permissively let your kids do what they want without bringing correction. In fact, lazy parenting is not disciplining your kids, and it shows later in life.
It does. And one of the things that I think we don't necessarily think about a lot is, as parents, we don't want our children to fail, so we sometimes help them too much.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you help your child too much? Well, you can. If your child never understands what type of repercussions they would receive if something happened, if they did something this way, if they don't understand that there are consequences to their actions, if we're always pulling them out before they ever receive any of those consequences, then sometimes we're pulling them out too quick and they don't ever learn that lesson. Yeah. And so sometimes we need to let our child fail. Sometimes we need to let them go a little bit further down the path where they're actually receiving the consequences of their actions, and they actually realize, wow, if I had made a different choice. And that's when it's a teaching moment. You say, okay, you chose to do this. Yeah. And so because you did this, this is the consequences to the action, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you, but you are going to have to pay for this. You are going to have to actually suffer the consequences of your actions. And I'm going to help you through it. You're going to be okay, but because you chose to do this, we talk about maybe an if-then chart. Put the if-then chart up on the refrigerator. If you talk back to mommy, then this is what happens. If you talk back to daddy, this is what happens. If you tell a lie, this is what happens. And they have consequences to their actions. If you make your bed, you get this. If you take out the trash, then this. And so they understand that there's good consequences just like there's bad consequences. We always think consequences are bad, but it's either good or bad depending upon the choices that we make. And we allow the child to go through that process so that they begin to understand that their choices matter. Their choices make a difference in their life, their quality of life. And if they make good choices, they have good consequences. If they make bad choices, they have bad consequences. But nevertheless, they do suffer consequences. They're not always pulled out of the fire. Yeah. And a lot of times as Christians, we think that we have the card that we can play to God, and we can say, God, help me. Yeah. And he's up there saying, well, I'm sorry that you chose to do this, but now then there's going to be some consequences. Yeah. And we see that in the Bible. It's clear. There are several times that people did things and it was their choice. God didn't lead them down that road. I'm sure that David had some good consequences and he had some bad consequences.
All his family turmoil was because of his actions. What he did, yes. And the Lord says, because of this, this isn't going to part from your family.
But he was also a man after God's heart.
I know.
Who was very disciplined, who went and wrote the Psalms and sang to the Lord and literally spent time with him, lamenting and praying to him and sharing his heart with him and saying, Lord, if you find any wicked way in me, forgive me. He wanted to be close to God, and he knew that that's where his strength was coming from, even though he did make some bad choices once in a while.
And that, years ago, I think right after Josh was born or whatever, I was talking with Miss Karen because you guys have very successful children. I mean, both your children are very successful, and they seem like they're like perfect.
No,
I know,
and it's not. But, God's grace is sufficient.
But they look good, and so we always talking with Miss Karen, and she used to say that she goes, "Well, yeah, you really have to emphasize the reality that they have a choice, and that the consequences they experience are connected to their choices." And so she would tell a story. She's like, when one of them was young and they'd choose to do something, and well, now this has to happen. Well, Mommy, I don't want that. And Miss Karen's like, well, I don't want it either, but this is what you chose. Because you chose that, this is the consequence. And so we learned. I learned a lot from that. And I know we're talking about kids, but the whole purpose we did this was to segue into the pastoral role of discipleship.
Sure.
And bringing discipline.
And that can be difficult because now then you're talking about a lot of times you're talking about older people. You're talking about adults. Yeah. You're talking about people that they're going out, they're making a living, they're doing life, and they're on their own. They're responsible for themselves. They're responsible for their actions, and they're not relying, or they shouldn't be still relying if they're out of the house, shouldn't still be relying on their parents. Now then they're relying on themselves and what their actions are. And so disciplining someone who is an adult,
So you can't spank them.
no, you can't spank them, but you can show them. You can show them these are the consequences, and what you're walking through right now is not an attack from Satan. What you're walking out right now is literally a result of a choice that you made. And so that can be difficult because
That's a
some
big
people
one,
think that
though.
everything that's bad is from Satan and everything that's good is from God. But sometimes some of the things that we view as bad is actually from God because He laid it out in His Word. There's things that we do and there's things that we don't do, and it's principled on the Word.
What's the balance as a pastor between you see someone's life and you're their pastor, so your duty is essentially, because if you don't do your job in pastoring, which means protecting the flock, bringing health, healing to the flock, all that stuff, then you have to answer to the Lord for it. And so
Sure.
people don't understand that. Like you, as a pastor, you do have a duty, and so sometimes there are situations where you have to. It's not comfortable, but you have to step in and be like, "Hey, I see this. I notice this. This is not healthy." Because it's, they keep making the decision and they stay in that cycle, right?
I would even go a little bit further than that. I think that a lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on a pastor, but as a believer in Christ, as a Christian, it is our responsibility. It is our duty to help those around us. And so, one of the things that is our I would say motto, but it's literally what our mission statement is that everyone's a minister.
Yeah.
And so in our church body, hopefully we're developing a culture here where we begin to have relationships with people. And it's very difficult to say something to someone that you don't have a relationship with. The Bible says a wound from a friend can be trusted. So it's upon us to become friends, to have relationship with our congregants, relationship with everyone that we're around. And then if we see something in a loving way, we can say something. But if you're a total stranger, talking to a total stranger,
Of course.
it's very
There's-
difficult to say anything
Exactly.
to them. So
Yeah, exactly.
although if something were out of order in a service or something, it would be our responsibility to go and say something or do something about it, not to just allow it to continue on. So that's happened before, not very often. Most people are very respectful, but once in a while you get someone that's out of order, so to speak, and you might have to go and say, "Hey, can I help you?" And let's step outside and not outside,
It just
outside,
happened.
but
Not
let's step in
here.
the foyer. But
Yeah.
to step out and find out what's going on.
It just happened, not here at this church, but when we were at a conference, it happened, and actually Pastor Jim was speaking, and a woman was in the crowd. I mean, amening, talking, yelling and stuff, but it was so disruptive. So they actually sent a team over there. That's when you're like, I'm glad I'm not the dad of the house, But it's discipline is like, I don't know. The more I'm in the body, because you have unhealthy leadership where it's like they're controlling and they do everything, right? And that's one extreme. But the other is, so you have the domineering parent, right? But then you have the passive permissive parent. Both are unhealthy.
Sure.
And so
There is a healthy balance.
There is.
And I think Jesus did a great job of being an example of how to have a disciple, how to discipline.
Absolutely.
And he allowed the disciples to do a lot of things, and they did a lot of things that they were amazed by, but they also did a lot of things and they had consequences. He allowed the disciples to make some mistakes so that they could understand what they were doing.
And
he
then when
allowed them
they-
to go through certain things so that they could get
And
it.
then when they, when they do kind of do things, and you're like, it's like his reactions are so much as like I think he makes the joke of calling John and James the sons of thunder or
Right.
whatever, and they want to call down fire. For me that's a joke. It's a correction, but it's like a light joke. But then you get to like Peter, where he rebukes and literally says, "Get behind me, Satan." I mean, so you get like a range of his light discipline, the heavy discipline, so to speak. You had the things of man, not the things of God on your heart. Uh, but as a pastor, I think there's a place where when you have to confront someone because you're seeing something, and then it depends, like you said, their upbringing. If they're not used to being corrected, um, they don't take it well. And it's not like you come and you say, "Hey," you come and we usually give vague metaphors like
Sure.
all the times, and then it gets
It's
more.
interesting. Sometimes we have unsanctified mercy,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
which is we allow it to continue. We don't confront.
Yeah.
We don't say anything, and then it's becoming more and more of a problem. But
It
now
gets
then,
entrenched in that individual's life, whereas
absolutely.
like
So whose fault is it at that point?
especially when you see it.
If you saw it, then it starts becoming your fault.
Yeah.
And you are responsible. Like you said, we are held accountable. We're held accountable for our actions.
Well, and Ray Sattler, he oversees our men's ministry. His big thing right now is fathering. He's trying to
Yes.
connect sons and the fathers and the grandfathers, but fathering to him looks like discipleship, discipline, and it's not just come in and tell you where you're doing wrong, but it's encouraging you when you're going in the right way.
Right.
And for a fatherless generation, which this generation it's Chris Valentin just wrote a book, Rise Up or something about it. It is a fatherless generation. It is hard for people to take discipline, and it just even light correction. I mean,
Here's what's interesting, and I will tell you that I did this wrong. I can honestly say I did this wrong. You will have more of a good relationship with your children if you give twice as much praise as you do correction. And unfortunately, because of my mindset, the way I think and everything, a lot of times I didn't give enough encouragement, enough praise, but I gave correction.
well, you're like a refiner, right?
I,
That's
I
kinda
am a
your.
refiner, but it's interesting. I think if there was one thing that I think that I could have done better at, it would have been that. I think that there would have been a greater result in my children, in our relationship, had I been more encouraging and more praising on them. Now then, I did praise them. I did
Yeah, and Miss
tell them
Karen
they did a
did
good
10
job.
times
and-
more
well,
than
sure, but
she's the exhorter.
she is an exhorter. But if you only discipline in a negative way, if you only bring correction all the time, and you don't ever say, "Hey, you did
You
this
did
really
great.
good. You did that
Yeah.
great," or whatever, without being prompted to, then when you open your mouth, they're already cringing. You can see that.
They're
So
waiting for the blow.
yeah, and you don't want that. So you do want to give encouragement, and I think that that's a very a very important aspect of being a pastor is coming in and giving compliment, giving recognition to people that are doing a great job or doing something that is above and beyond, making sure that happens. A lot of times we don't recognize a lot of people that are working behind the scenes, and I love to do that. I love to walk up to someone that is doing something that's kind of behind the scenes and let them know that's encouraging to me, and let them know that they're doing a great job, and what they're doing is very, very important, because all the stuff that happens behind the scenes, it's very, very important. I mean, everybody can't be the one up front, and I'm usually not the one up front. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes.
Yeah. No, that's true. And, Paul even talks about that, honoring those essentially who are doing the things behind the scenes that do matter, giving them, making sure they are honored rather than the visible ones that are obviously honored. I think of the people at our church who, I think of Mr. Gary, who every day holds the door open and he walks around and checks the locks.
Amen.
And,
Yes.
people like that. And there's so many more. But I know it's just, when I was a missionary, I wasn't a pastor, but I was a missionary. And so my job isn't necessarily to take care of the flock. It was to go down and stir people up for missions and mission work and outreach and evangelism. And so when I came on staff here as a pastor, it's a whole different dynamic of pastor. Because, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I was like, look, I'm after your long-term health, your long-term success, not the immediate, are you immediately doing it? It's long-term, right? And it's an interesting thing as a pastor, but so much of your class that you do with the Aleph and, just who you are in general, caters around long-term health in your spiritual walk in life. Because, yeah, you might be able to hear the Lord and give someone a prophetic word, but are you living a healthy life? And lately, I was talking with John, one of our other pastors, about examples like John G. Lake. If you know anything about his life, he went with his wife to Africa. I can't remember where in Africa, maybe South Africa, and had a ministry. And he so dedicated himself to his ministry and traveling and doing what he was doing that his wife was suffering from impoverished conditions. And they had 7 kids, if I'm not mistaken. And his wife ended up dying from malnourishment, right? But some people look at John G. Lake, and this is not a knock on him, it's to bring some clarity to what you do. Some people look at John G. Lake's life and they say, wow, amazing. I look at it and I say, man, what happened? Like, he had a great gifting, he did great things, but it's like, you look at that and you're like, that is not the heart of God for his family, right? But other people look at it and all they see is the spiritual side of what he's doing, and they don't look at his home life. They don't look at the fact that his wife had died from not having enough food. And so they look at that, and what you're doing is you're saying it's all good, and it's not the only thing you do, but you say, look, all that you're doing is great, but how are you here in your home life? How are you in your personal life? Or are you straining out a gnat but swallowing a camel, so to speak? And I think so much of just your class with the practical discipline, it helps people look at that and step back and say, well, what does it profit anything if I'm out there and I can share the gospel to someone, but inside I am just undisciplined and falling apart,
So looking at your priorities, and that's all that is a matter of, is your priorities. Your number 1 priority, your personal relationship with the Lord. Your number 2 priority, your spouse. Your number 3 priority, your children. And then going on down, probably number 4 is probably your extended family, maybe still your parents if they're still alive, and on and on. Ministry comes below that. And that's where I talk about this in one of my lessons about your priorities. And those are priorities. The Lord tells us to train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they won't depart from it. Well, it's not that we train them all the same. It says train them up in the way that they should go. So now it behooves the parents to get alone with God. God, what's the direction for this child? Yeah. And show me and help me to train this child in the way that they're supposed to be going, so that when they're older, they'll stay on that path and keep going toward their destined purpose that you gave to them.
I mean, every kid's so different.
Absolutely. And taking care of your wife. I mean, Ephesians talks about it, Galatians talks about it. I mean, there's many passages of Scripture of how you're to love your wife and how you're to care for her, and how you're to honor your husband if you're a wife out there and you're honoring your husband, and how to do that and what that looks like. And it talks about, having your house in order. It talks about being equipped for the ministry, but part of the prerequisites to becoming a minister, becoming an elder in the church is actually having
your household.
Yeah, having your household in order.
Yep.
And so, in a lot of ways, when you start looking at that, the priorities are set in the Word of how we're supposed to kind of look at life and do life. And if we just follow that, we won't get things upside down.
Yeah, I was reading this morning in 1 Corinthians where Paul talks about being married and not married. And he says, he goes, well, just know if you're not married, then you're only concerned about the things of the Lord, pleasing him. He says, but if you are married, you're also concerned with pleasing your wife. Like he says, look, this is, and he doesn't say that's a bad thing. He says this is a reality.
Right.
Because if you're going to be married, you need to have a healthy marriage, and you don't need to forsake your wife or your husband, to only please the Lord, right? And so that's a hard thing for some people to chew, because they're like, well, no, I just want to chase after the Lord, and they'll run and leave their families or whatever behind, and then they get applauded for it. But Paul says that's actually not how it works. He says, in fact, if that's how you're going to do it, don't get married. If you're going to burn with passion, get married. He goes, but understand when you get married that you now have other responsibilities that you are responsible for. And so I think it's interesting that, we forget those things.
Well, God's a God of relationship. I mean,
Absolutely.
He created us for relationship. He created us to have relationship. And our marriage is supposed to be a foreshadowing of when Jesus comes again and takes his bride. What does that look like? We wouldn't want Jesus coming for us and then all of a sudden, well, he's just too busy. He's going to be doing something else. We want to be married to him. We want to be with him. We're not in this thing to go and just sit somewhere and that's it. Our relationship's built on that he loves us and we love him, and that's the way our marriage should be as well. We love our spouses, and we are literally giving up part of our lives for our spouse.
Absolutely.
And we're, when we have children, we're giving up part of our lives, and we talked about that earlier, about being selfish. It's hard on selfish people, because selfish people want to do whatever they want to do, and they don't want to include everybody else necessarily. They just want to do what they want to do, and they want to satisfy their fleshly desires and or their soulish desires. And spiritually, though, we're supposed to be taking care of that.
Yeah.
And the word's very specific on that. If men are supposed to be the head of the home, then there's a whole lot of responsibility.
Yes.
That means there's going to be a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time spent making sure that everyone else has theirs before you have yours.
Yeah, and it's true. And I know we're coming up on our time, but when I first came on staff, I had a dream, and essentially the dream was like, the dream told me, you are leaving your wife behind in pursuit of the Lord. And it was not a good thing. He says, you're leaving your wife behind. We were in two different cars, and I took off and started speeding way beyond the speed limit, right? And spun out of control way up the road. And so, but it was a you're leaving your wife behind thing. And so the Lord cares. Like the Lord's like, you need to go slower. You need to go slower, because you are obligated and you are in covenant relationship to the person you're leaving behind. And so I did. I had to slow down, because, it's like the saying we have. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's so true. I mean, you can burn ahead and go fast by yourself. But if you want to go far, you slow down. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And anyway, the Bible speaks to all these things, and those are things that you bring out a lot of time in class, which is...
I try to.
Well, yes. You try to. But everyone appreciates your classes, your object lessons. The one you do with the ages of everybody in the Old Testament always blows your mind, because you're like, ah! But anyway, so before we close out today, what book of the Bible are you reading right now?
I've been in Ephesians and...
Lamentations.
Oh, no.
I'd be worried for you. I'm in Lamentations. So, Book of Ephesians.
Right. We do our marriage classes, and that's structured, but we're also doing some counseling with a couple of couples, and those passages in Ephesians are really keys to helping a lot of people.
Absolutely.
They're not... Sometimes people don't realize that there's a lot of answers in the Word to their issues.
Absolutely.
And you just have to pull it out. You have to just really, dig sometimes. Sometimes it's just black and white.
Sometimes you just need to read it.
Right. So, but yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Pastor Jimmy, for your time today.
Absolutely.
Before we head out, will you pray for everybody watching?
Sure. Father, I just thank you for our time together, Lord. I pray that, Lord, anything that was said that wasn't glorifying to you, Father, I pray that it's not remembered. But Father, I just pray that as we go from here, Lord, I pray that we would understand even more your love for us, how you do discipline us, how we are to receive that discipline, that, Lord, you allow us sometimes even to go through consequences of our actions, Lord, not to be mean or cruel to us, Lord, but you allow us to go through consequences so that we learn from it, so that we can experience, Lord, what you want us to experience, so that we glean from our experiences. Lord, I just pray over each one that's out there, Lord. I just pray that they would understand a greater revelation that you do love us. You love us so much that you want us to be drawn closer and closer to you, and to spend time with you, to have a relationship with you. And Lord, I just pray if anyone's out there and they don't have a relationship with you, Father, I pray that they would choose to begin just reading your word, just praying to you, just seeking your face early in the morning, and see the difference that it makes in their life. Lord, I pray that they would just, if they don't know you, that they would want to know you, that they would desire to know you, that they would begin to seek you. Lord, your word says, seek first your kingdom and your righteousness, and all these other things will be added. Lord, I pray that we would all begin to seek you first and your kingdom first and all your righteousness, Lord. And Lord, I thank you that the other things do just fall into place. Lord, thank you again for this time. Bless each one. Bless our school. Bless this ministry. Lord, I thank you that you allow us to work in your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen. Well, thank you all for watching. Again, this is Pastor Jimmy, our student body pastor and one of our associate pastors here at Christian Center Shreveport. Remember, if you're watching this, you like it, share, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. This really helps us. It helps with the algorithms that be on social media. So thank you guys for tuning in. We just pray you guys have a blessed day.